Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Madowo. Welcome to this special edition of Decision 2017. I know a lot of you are tired of hearing Decision 2017. Hopefully, we're near the end of it and we'll retire it soon. But today, it's a big one. The Supreme Court upholding the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. I want to get some reaction and what happens next now from some of the oldest names in politics and government. Sitting here with me is Franklin Bett, the former Roads Minister, who, by the way, in 1991, was the State House Controller. And there's an interesting story about that, which maybe we might get to if he's feeling like that. Fred Gumo is also here with me, and an old hand in politics, former Westlands MP, the governor of the great people of Nyandarua, Francis Kimemia, joining us tonight, who has been head of civil service, secretary to the cabinet, and chaired the Assumption Committee in 2013. So we have a lot to learn from him. Also, joining me from Limuru today is the ACK Bishop of the Diocese of Bondo, Professor David Kodia, and from Kisumu, the activist and politician Koigi Wamwere. Let me start with you, Koigi. Your reaction to the Supreme Court upholding the election of President Kenyatta today. What did you think when that ruling was handed down, Koigi?
I think the first thing that came to mind is that finally we are coming to the close of this entire electoral business, because listening to the people, clearly they are tired of too much politics, and it's quite clear to most of them that the only way to bring about an end to this business, which has actually kept them away from their other things,
right,
is for the court to pronounce its finding. And being a believer in the rule of law, I was quite ready to accept the decision of the court, and to hope that other the main political players will also accept that decision and agree to live with it. So the first thing that came to mind after that consideration is really to say to myself that I hope when the president is finally inaugurated, and that he will begin the serious business of running this country to the best, to the benefit of everybody.
All right.
It also came to my mind that we have more than the president and the government for this country to have what it deserves. So I said to myself that I'm hopeful that the opposition is also going to ready itself in the business of serving this country as well. And if we can have the government doing what is its business to do, and the opposition also doing what is its business to do, I am quite sure that the people of the country will also now stop looking at the business of elections and begin to do what this country needs to have done for the economy to start running as it should, and for people to begin to feel that they are over the chapter of elections, and can get busy with the other business which the country badly needs.
Which the country badly needs, and that's become a very popular narrative. I want to go to you, Bishop Kodia. Are the Kenyans tired of too much politics, or what was their reaction to the Supreme Court upholding the election of President Kenyatta?
I think the decision that the Supreme Court arrived at is not a question of legality of the entire electoral process. It calls for certain questions which we have to raise and find answers to them. One, what is the moral value of the decision that they have made vis-a-vis the expectation of the public? And in my own view, The burden now lies with the president. The first task he has is not to celebrate, but to shed tears, not really tears of joy, but tears that calls for how to unite the country that is divided along both political and ethnic lines. So I wouldn't say that the decision of the court is going to solve the Kenyan problem, not until the deeply rooted suspicion, the deeply rooted moral issues that arise as a result of our incompetence in managing our electoral process are dealt with. We are still going to experience a lot of suspicion with regard to how the government is going to be accepted as legitimate.
Okay.
But again, I want to say this. Kenyans need to embrace the rule of law. And in as much as we embrace the rule of law, we have to also appreciate the diversity of opinions that will arise and still continue to arise as a result of public expectation.
All right, we'll come back to both of you in a moment, but right now, though, I want to talk to my guests over here. First of all, we obviously don't talk about the divisions, but let's start, Franklin, with your reaction to the Supreme Court ruling today.
First, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the President for being declared the winner of the 26th October elections. And my reaction is very simple. The people are fatigued, very tired. The nation has been politicking. We have been making it look so toxic to an extent that the confidence in our country was beginning to slide down. Businesses were also going down. So I think the decision by the Supreme Court today to allow President Kenyatta to be sworn in is indeed a blessing, in that we will then be able, hopefully, like a phoenix, raise this country in its stature amongst the nations of the world.
Does this then end the political season we've had this year, do you think?
Well, it should, because you see, it has been long. People have been politicking for nearly a whole year. And it has also been a habit of Kenyans to do politics throughout the 5 years. I hope they won't do that now. But today's decision, everybody was waiting. But the majority of the people were already tired with it, because they wanted to come to get to the end of this, so that we can continue working and reorganizing our country and doing business. Because you see, we can't have politics all through. But what the decision that the High Court made, I think it was the best.
The Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court. It was the best. Because first, people who went to court didn't participate in elections. Secondly, if you look at their reasons, particularly when they were insisting that there should have been nominations, the court had already overruled that. The court ordered for a repeat of elections. It never said you have to go for nominations.
Right.
So there was no other way. So whatever the decision the court made was the best. But all the same, the most important thing is for us to get on, because the president won these elections and we needed him to be sworn in so that we can start working.
Governor, the bishop said that court ruling does not solve the Kenyan problem.
Yes.
What is your reaction to that?
First of all, I'd like to thank the, the president for today's decision, for winning the election twice in less than 3 months. As you know, as governors, we were elected with a manifesto. And we made many promises. 100 days, we have done this. And then we went back to politics, to campaigns and so on. So today's decision was a very, very good decision in terms of letting the country start moving forward. I think what the bishop is saying, and what I would like to say is that the nation must start also reconciling. We must begin the process of reconciliation in this country. We must start the process of uniting the countries, and the governors have a big role to play in terms of uniting this country, reducing ethnicity, and also start the hearing process. Not just reconciliation, but the hearing process. You know, there are 4 counties that did not vote.
Right.
They must also be meant to feel part and parcel of the economy of this country. And I'm sure where President Uhuru sits, he's not going to deny them resources. I'm sure he would want to see an all-inclusive country, an all-inclusive cabinet, or inclusive government, so that we start hearing and moving forward. We should ask ourselves the question, must we fight every 5 years? Will 5 years be about the maturity of our governance, the maturity of our politics, or is it the moment to start bloodshed and destruction of property in this country? And those are questions we must hold a Kenya We Want conference. That's what I believe myself. We should hold a Kenya We Want conference, address ethnicity, address bloodsheds every 5 years, see how we can mature up as a democracy.
Let me draw on your experience. In 2013, you chaired the Committee on Assumption of Office of the President.
Yes.
When the transition between President Kibaki and President Kenyatta happened.
Yes.
What is the role of this committee? It's a different circumstance this time because President Kenyatta is getting re-elected, so beginning his 2nd term. So how different are the terms here?
No, they are not any different, because either way it must be sworn. The only thing that will not happen is that there will be no sword to hand over to President Uhuru, because he already has it. But the rigmarole of swearing in and inviting international guests, redeeming the country's image, getting people to see that this is a mature democracy, we are a country that wants to move forward, this will happen, and I'm sure they will start meeting possibly tomorrow. I think they should meet immediately.
They're starting meetings tomorrow.
They should start inviting international guests, bringing in international investors to start coming and rethinking the country in terms of economics. So that we recover what we have lost as a country. A whole year of politicking, almost three months of destruction of property, doing nothing, governors just sitting idle. I think it's a high time we started moving on a high speed. To the issue of security plan, that must be done by that transitional committee. You cannot still we still have Al-Shabaab and other threats in the country. That must still be interfaced by that security committee. That's why all the elements of security, the judiciary, the chief justice, the chief registrar, they're all in to make sure that the swearing in is done, but again the security of the country is maintained. Because this event is happening next Tuesday at Kasarani. Yes. It's a big stadium, something like 60,000 capacity. Yes. So is it possible to do it within they have a week to do this, because on Tuesday President Kenyatta will be sworn in. So between now and then they have to put all of these things together. Yes, that is more than enough. 2-3 days is enough to hold that conference. Including international... maybe the travels, but I'm sure they were ready with the letters. Possibly the signatures have been put in there. That's what I've done. But today the letters should have left the country to whoever international guests we want to invite to come to this country. Yes. You've been familiar with this kind of work. You as State House Controller, basically right next to the president, making all sorts of these decisions. So this is a very what do you say, very important time in the country's transition process. Yeah, I agree with the governor. The time is okay because it has been done before. So it's only and it's in book. So those who are implementing or causing the swearing-in ceremony to be done must be also having such notes to use themselves. So it's not, the time should not be a worry. But after that swearing in, it is the time now the real job begins. The president must ask himself, what has happened to us? What can be done to resolve our situation? Okay. So he needs to ask himself those questions. He needs to ask himself how to reach to certain individuals, to reach to certain communities, so that that healing process is brought together
by the president personally or by representatives, bringing in the people of Kenya to think in terms of we are Kenyan. Because we only have one country, Larry. It's not two countries. And if we destroy this one country, it is not Uhuru Kenyatta alone who perishes or Raila alone who perishes. We all perish as a people. So I would want, as a Kenyan, to urge all of us, let us appreciate each other. Let us respect each other. Let the president reach to all Kenyans, irrespective of the political divide. I mean, there is no harm today if the president picks a phone and says, Raila, can you come and we discuss? Or if Raila even himself says, Mr. President, you have won, I congratulate you, I would want to see you. There is no shame in that. We belong to one country and we must all together contribute to the wellness, to the well-being of this country. And just like it is said in the Bible, God said, come, let us reason together. Let us reason together. I want to urge the entire body politic, opposition and government. Let us reason together.
Let me actually put that to the pastor, right? Because we've got the bishop. Come, let us reason together, it says in the Bible. Is that the way forward out of sorting this, what you're calling the Kenyan problem, Bishop Kodia?
Yes, you know, people must reason all the time. And when there is a need for reasoning, there must be a substance before them which they have to address. And in our Kenyan situation, there is deeply rooted divisions amongst our political leaders from different divides. And again, there is economic impoverishment of certain regions in this country. And there is that deeply rooted spiritual poverty which is affecting our nation. We are talking of myriad of issues which we have to address. So reasoning together would create an opportunity for diverse reasonings so that as we bring everything on the table, we are honest with one another and we shape our own destiny as a nation. I think it's not the time that we can be able to involve outsiders to come and help us solve our own problem.
All right.
Because we know what the problems are.
Okay.
And we know that answers or solutions lie with us. So reasoning is part of our biblical mandate as a churchman. And as human beings, people used to sit down and they sort out their problems. But there must be that level of honesty, there must be that level of concern, and there must be that high commitment from all stakeholders.
Okay. Let's leave it there for the moment. Bishop, Koigi, everybody stay with me. I have to take a quick break. We're coming back to talk about more of what happens next. But also, we've got a statement from the Carter Center. Remember them? They're the observer group that a lot of Kenyans had issues with after their August 8th statement on that first election. We'll tell you what they're saying now, and we'll get my reaction with the reactions from my panel. back to this special edition of Decision 2017. My guest is still here. I was telling you just before we went to break, we've got a new statement now from the Carter Center, the observer group that has been observing the two elections, August 8th, and then again on 26th October, the fresh election. And this statement is calling for dialogue from the Carter Center. Let me read some bits for you. While the 2017 elections represent a clear setback for democratic processes in Kenya, going forward, it is incumbent on political leaders and their supporters to seek common ground. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who has a fresh mandate to lead all Kenyans, should reinitiate the national dialogue that culminated in the 2010 Constitution. This statement from the Carter Center goes on to say, a renewed dialogue should result in additional measures to address the ethnic and tribal rifts that have long characterized Kenya's politics while ensuring the protection and fulfillment of the rights of all Kenyans. Koigi, what is your reaction to that? The Carter Center calling for dialogue. A lot of the people on the panel tonight also calling for dialogue. Is that the way out of the political situation right now?
Yes, I sincerely believe that that is some of the way that we must go. But let me say that we must do more. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, we have been talking about the inauguration next week, and inviting people from outside the country to come and attend. And when that was being said, I was asking myself whether the opposition is going to be invited to the inauguration, whether other Kenyans who don't come from the high up will also be given an opportunity to attend that same event, since it is really not a party event. I believe that it will be a national event that will try and bring all the Kenyans together. It will be some form of dialogue. But I know that there is a more formal dialogue that is being referred to, and which we must, and whose necessity we must emphasize here. Mm-hmm. Because, as the bishop said, it is all very well winning an election or even complaining about not winning. But those who have won the election, they have work to do. And some of the work they must do is uniting the country. This country is divided right down the middle right now. It needs to be united. And the person who must lead the process of uniting this country is the president, because he has what it takes to bring, say, a national convention together to discuss the problems that will help this country to reconcile.
Right.
Right now, as it has been said, we have a huge problem with the negative ethnicity or tribalism. This problem is hitting this country like cancer, and we must acknowledge that it is there and stop ignoring or stop benefiting from its misuse. We must agree this is a cancer that is eating this country alive and which will destroy this country. We have the huge problem of corruption that is responsible for many other problems like unemployment of the youth, youth who are now more or less desperate. And sometimes I wonder whether we see so many young people in our rallies because they have nothing else to do. But certainly unemployment, poverty, corruption must be addressed seriously as national issues that must be addressed formally.
All right.
We have the reforms that both the ruling party now and the opposition have been talking about. We saw Jubilee Party, through its members of parliament, legalize or make a bill that includes some of the reforms that they desired. It must be remembered that reforms have been suggested both from the from Jubilee and also from NASA.
But
now that the elections are over, the government must promise, the president must promise the country that his government is going to look into the problem of reforms. And this must be done not in order to please, not in order to please the opposition, but to do what is right. Because one of the problems that we have had for a long time,
you talk about here,
other than the problems that we have mentioned here,
let me just jump in
is
for
the
a moment,
question
Koigi.
of election rigging. Something that we have complained about almost every year we have an election.
Right.
During the other election, people complained about rigging. In the years before that, there were also complaints about rigging. This year, people complained about rigging. Something must be done about this problem in order to have the country look at elections differently.
Okay.
Right now, when you think of elections in Kenya,
right,
you have stomachache because you think of war, you think of divisions, you think of demonstrations, and even the language that we use, we know that it's a language that does not unite us. So let us remember, we have been where we are fearing to go before. In the year 2007 and 2008, we had a huge problem. This country got into some sort of a civil war. We don't want to go there again. And let us remember, it's not enough to say the president has been, declared the winner. The High Court, the Supreme Court, has ruled that he actually won legitimately,
right,
and he is therefore the legitimate president. Despite all these rights, we must remember that we have problems that have gotten us to where we are. We must address those problems seriously.
How do you address those problems seriously, though, Gumo, when, at least for the NASA side, they insist, and today they have repeated, they do not recognize President Kenyatta as the president of the country?
Well, that's unfortunate, because for us to unite this country, we must accept that President Kenyatta is the president. And to unite this country is not only for the president, it's for both opposition and the ruling party. Because we have participated in elections, and you can see the country is now divided into two, more or less, and there's no way we are going to manage to unite them until they also accept. Because it's not for the president alone, it's for them also. Because if you have hope of one day becoming the president of this country, you must work for the united country.
But as Koigi mentions, that part of the reason why those divisions exist is because every time you talk about an election in Kenya, there's rigging, and there's people who are concerned that the election was rigged.
Yes, but you see, the thing is this. You can say that election is rigged, but you don't have a proof. That's why we have a court. That's why we go to court, to make sure that we solve such problems. Because you see, Kenya is so large, and I have been a politician, I have stood for elections. There are very few people who accept that they have been defeated. There are not many. Majority of them will say they have been rigged. Okay, and that's why we have a court. That's why you have to go to court and petition and give reasons. But the moment the court has decided, if you are really committed for the unity of this country, I think you should accept and wait for another term, because it's only 5 years. You can wait. But we should not divide the country because we have not won. Because if you look at, we have got cases even in parliamentary, in constituencies, where people were defeated with only 5 votes. You see? And they have accepted. Because in any election, there is only one number one. The rest have lost. Whether you are number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, you have lost. And if we want to carry on and unite this country, we must accept. Because if we don't accept, then what next? Now the president has, the NASA has gone to court. No, I mean not NASA this time. it was
the civil society
civil
groups.
society went to court.
And Harun Mwau.
And Harun Mwau, the court has made a decision. And we have to go by that decision. We must respect the courts. And that's why we have the courts there. If we don't respect them, then we should not have them. There must be an mediator. Even if you are fighting physically with you, and somebody comes and tries to separate us and talks to us, we must accept if we want to clear that difference.
Is this dialogue the way out of this, Governor?
There's nothing wrong with dialogue. There's nothing wrong with dialogue. And I think we need to appreciate that, somebody said there comes a time when the nation must be seen to be above, and it did be above all of us. And I think this is a time for Mheshimiwa Raila, for those that have won the election. I think this is a time when the nation must be more celebrated than any single individual in this country. So after the swearing in, what I would advise myself is that all these people must come together. All these leaders must come together. I remember I talked about even discussing the Kenya we want, and in a more sustainable way. Not these quick fixes. After the swearing in, people meet together, then very quickly say, yes, we want this, we shall abolish tribalism. We need institutional arrangements in the country.
COD,
see how
before
we can.
It was NASA, there was COD, and COD has suggested a national dialogue on some
Yes.
of these issues, and President Kenyatta did not agree to it.
But you see, at that time, it's like they were running away from the election. You see, after every 5 years, the main dialogue must be in the ballot. You must dialogue in the ballot so that Kenyans can choose the government they want to elect.
Right.
So, and I think that was the issue. Let's go to the ballots. Let's elect the president we want. And I think since Uhuru has emerged as the president now, and what we are agreeing is after the swearing in, then we must see that continued dialogue and structural adjustments in the country so that we are able to now address issues of ethnicity, issues of tribalism, issues of hatred, issues of healing in a more structured way. So that the 5 years are spent focusing the nation on economics. I think we focus too much on politics in this country, and we must have structural ways, fundamental ways of focusing Kenyans on unemployment of the youth, getting water and electricity to the people, creating potato industries, creating sugarcane industries, in Nyanza, creating opportunities in the economic blocks that we are creating as governors in the various, and also uniting those blocks. If it's a block from Nyanza, why not work with the blocks in Central or in Coast so that Kenyans start feeling together? Look at the universities. Universities have become agents of tribalism. That you go to the nursery school in Kisii, you go to high school in Kisii, go to university in Kisii. You don't know what happens in Nyanza. You don't know that there are also people in Nyanza, people in Coast, people in Central. I think we also have to start looking at the educational curriculum in the reforms and start creating global citizens in our education system.
You know both of these men well. President Kenyatta, you used to work for him and secretary to the cabinet. You know Raila Odinga from the Grand Coalition government. What insight have you gleaned from their personalities or their stances on issues like these that are likely to inform this? Do you think this dialogue you talk about is likely to happen? No,
it's likely to happen. It's likely to happen. I know President Uhuru is very, very open to open discussions. I know leader opposition, Laila, is also very open to discussions. But I know he has problems with advisors. I mean, he is a slave to his advisors. What you agree with him has to be, weighed against very, very many advisors, sometimes who misadvise. For example, not going to the election as a political leader of Laila's stance, and it was a major, major mistake.
Is he getting bad advice?
He is getting very bad advice. Not bad advice, but very dangerous advice. I think if I were him, I would completely do away with the advisors I have and create a new team of advisors and be able to come on the table and start hearing, and so that he's remembered in history of Kenya as a leader who stood with Kenya and supported the nation of Kenya.
Was that the same case as well during the Grand Coalition government and the many differences he had with President Kibaki?
It was the same problem. You will agree on something, and then other people would come in and pour sand on food, and that's what we ended up with. But we still encouraged each other, and one on one we always agreed. But when the time that party comes in, And Gumo, Mheshimiwa Gumo would agree to this, because I sent him many times to intervene. So maybe
see, as he says,
Franklin is very amused.
There is one area
Yes.
which we also need to address when it comes to talking to each other as a people, as a country. There is a culture which has been brought into our discourses, be it on public rallies, be it in social media. There is this culture which has been allowed in, the culture of insults, the culture of insulting leaders, irrespective of age. That I think also needs to be addressed, because you find leaders going to a podium and nearly 3/4 of their time they are discussing an individual. Yet there is this statement of long ago that if you find the people discussing others, those people have got simple minds. But if you find people discussing greater issues, those people have great minds. Like the governor is saying, we need to be discussing issues of national importance, of development, not insults, not abusing each other, not calling each other's names. It's actually what is contributing also to the animosity, to the suspicion, is creating, it's also extending this bit of ethnicity. Talking about ethnicity also, with due respect to the governor, I think the counties also have precipitated or exacerbated the aspect of ethnicity. In that, it is even worse of this way. I was listening to my senior, Fred, earlier on. He was saying a fellow went looking for a job in another county. He was told, you don't come from this county.
So we can give you a job.
You can give you a job. So he went to another county, and he was told from that county to go back to his county. And you see, he was told you belong to Kiambu. And he went looking for a job in Muranga. The Muranga fellows told him, you have got to go back to where? Kiambu. The same thing also happened to us in those sides of Rift Valley, whereby you find a person from Kericho County is not taken into employment in a neighboring county because he's from Kericho.
They would not go to Bomet.
They would not go to Bomet, they would not go to Nandi.
Yes.
The Nandi fellow would not come to Kericho. A Luo, in fact, I remember there was a lady Luo who was interviewed for a job in Kericho County. It raised a lot of dust. So gradually the governor eased out that request. And yet even the lady was not even from deep into Luo land. She was just from just at the border of Kericho. So ethnicity, yeah. So ethnicity has also been exacerbated, or it's been intensified within the counties.
The structures.
So we would be asking our governors in their structural arrangements to find a way of absorbing Kenyans on merit.
Yes.
That they are able to do this job irrespective of where they come from.
Okay.
And the other issue, of course, I said is insults. One person, I'm one person who do not like insults of the president, present and past. Of the leader of the opposition, I don't like.
Okay.
It's not good. It's not good, especially also if we are doing it in the presence of our children. What are we teaching our children? That you can insult Fred Gumo, that you can insult Uhuru Kenyatta, that you can insult Raila Odinga. What will happen? The decadence, that culture will destroy us. So I think as part of this healing, we need to remove or to find ways and means of eliminating those cultures that are cropping in, that are coming in.
Okay. Let me actually talk about that. Bishop, what do you make of our political discourse, the insults that happen so regularly, but also, do you think the political discourse in the country has degenerated so much, which is maybe why you see all these hardline positions in political matters?
Is it me?
What do you make of the political discourse in the country right now? Are people taking a lot of hardline positions because there's a lot of insults being shared left, right, and center, especially among NASA and Jubilee politicians always abusing each other?
There is a decline in our public morality. And what I can say for sure is that every Kenyan needs to reflect on how we can rebuild our moral fabrics, which has been destroyed by self-interest. It has been destroyed by materialistic trends. It has been destroyed by political affiliations. Unless we consolidate our holistic approach to human values, we'll still be calling each other all sorts of names. I think when we were brought up as a child, I remember that even abusing a fellow child would bring the wrath of the adult who is near us. But today we call them all sorts of names. It is the decline of our moral values. And I think, Larry, we need to go back as a nation to rediscover ourselves and say, what is the best for our children? What is the best for ourselves? What is the best for our neighbors? Because what is the best for our neighbor must also be the best for us. And what is best for us must equally be best for our neighbors. So these tribal inclinations, where some want to believe that because they are born in a certain area, they are better than others who are born in other areas. It is God who decided where we are to be born. We cannot choose that. And we have to learn to start appreciating our values, our African values, without necessarily aping everything which is Western. Today, the so-called human rights, it has taken a different dimension, whereby a child will also even tell you, you have nothing to do with me. You cannot cane even a child when a child is misbehaving, because this is the values we are now instilling in a child, the defiance kind of a life. So this is the reason why even our young people today, you find them, they are easily triggered into violence, because that's the language we know best. And I want to say, we have to say a stop to this. And we must start inculcating our values, our African values, blending it with our religious values. And once we blend all these things, we'll find our new identity. It's only on that basis, that's when we can be able to reason together as a people.
All right, let's leave it there for the moment, Bishop and Koigi, my guests over here. We'll come back to conclude this conversation in just a moment. Right now, though, another quick break on Decision 2017. We'll be right back. back to the final part of Decision 2017, this special edition on the day the Supreme Court upheld the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta. I want to conclude right now with Bishop. Actually, let me read his full title because I think I didn't give him proper justice. The Right Reverend Canon Professor David Hellington Kodia is with us tonight, Bishop of the Diocese, the ACK Diocese of Bondo, but in Limuru at Brackenhurst tonight. I want to conclude with you, Bishop. What is your advice to the politicians and what is your advice to Kenyans in this season right now? All right, I think we might have lost audio from the bishop, so we're going to try and get that back up. But I want to go also to Koigi Wamwere, who's joining us in Nakuru today. You ran initially for a senator in Nakuru, I believe on a Jubilee ticket, and then you lost, I think, at the nominations, and then you went to NASA. And I don't know if you're still in NASA 1 and 2. How does this play out for NASA that have insisted they don't recognize the legitimacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta?
For me, personally, I believe that once the court has talked or has issued its ruling, its verdict, I think the best thing, if we want to end or to have a new beginning, I think we must accept the decision of the court. We must allow the president to be inaugurated. We want him to begin his work, because I think if we go back to some of these old differences,
right,
the problems might never end.
Okay.
And yet we want really to get along.
Okay.
But having said that, I would like to say that it has been said severally that politics is not enmity. It's when you are an opponent to somebody else, you are not necessarily his enemy. And I think we should adopt politics, clean politics, that acknowledge the right of others to play the same game without necessarily looking for ways and means of hurting others. And yet I think that our politics have been problematic so far because we have adopted negative ethnicity as the ideology of our politics. And I know fellow panelists there have been talking about the problem of ethnicity. But sincerely, I think that the problem we have is not that of ethnicity, because none of us chooses into what community one will be born. And I don't believe that there is anything wrong with ethnicity as such. I think the problem we have is the problem of negative ethnicity, whose other name is tribalism.
Right.
But again, I don't like using the word tribalism because it connotes primitivity that we were burdened with by colonialists. So I want, therefore, to say that going forward, if we really want to unite this country, we must give up the ideology of negative ethnicity. We must also start addressing issues rather than personalities. And I have heard President Kenyatta say many times that the right politics are the politics of issues, not the politics of personalities. Mm-hmm. But when you listen, especially to television talk shows, all you hear is really about personalities. One side will be attacking the president, in person even calling him names, while the other side will be talking about Raila all the time, and issues get lost in between. Larry, there is something else that I want to mention.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
That if we really need to reconcile, if we really need this country to get back on track, we must pay attention to some of the things that are being said, and yet I feel they are not being looked at, they are not being taken seriously. And you remember in 2007, 2008, we nearly had a civil war in this country because some people are not listening to what was being said. And we went headlong into politics, into elections, without remembering or keeping in mind what was being said about the problems both for the elite and for the masses. Larry, if you listen to people talking, you hear that a lot of people have been talking about secession, that we are going to secede if we are not given this.
Right.
Especially some have been saying, unless we have an election in 90 days, we are going to declare secession. We have seen the setting up of people's assemblies.
Yes.
And I'm saying, when you look at setting up of people's assemblies, it's like a parallel government is being organized. And I'm saying, if there is any problem that really calls for urgent attention, it must address this talk of the talk of secession and the talk of people's assemblies, because I think that unless we can persuade the opposition to move away from this, I think these are things that are likely to cause a lot of problems.
Okay.
And to finish, let me add that the question of who advises the president is very important. Who advises Raila is very important.
Francis Kimemia
because
says
these
that
are
Raila
our
is
two
getting
key
bad
leaders.
advice.
And if they have wrong advisors, it is likely they will make their mistakes. And here I would like to mention that if we want to know what kind of advisors we should have for our leaders, let us look at the story of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, the one who took over from Solomon when he died. And in the story of Rehoboam, we are told that Rehoboam actually caused a split of this country because he ignored the advice of elders and instead preferred to work with the advice of youth. And the advice that the youth gave the king was to be harsh with the people, to oppress his people, to actually treat them like slaves. And the reaction of the people was to for 10 tribes of Israel to separate from 2 tribes of Israel, which was the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin.
Okay.
So I would like that, let us really address this issue of advisors seriously.
Okay.
And I would like here also to mention to the President Kenyatta that if he has time, it will not harm for him to read a book that is called The Team of Rivals. He will see how in that book, you will see how Abraham Lincoln was able to incorporate his competitors in the election into his government in order for it to be able to win the Civil War that was trying to emancipate the black people of America.
All right.
So if the president can take time, look at that book, see whether it can help him or realize from reading it that it is not cowardice if you decide to work with your political opponents, because ultimately all of you have the same duty, which is to work for the country and the people of our country.
Okay, so Koigi Wamwere has given a book reading lesson. He has given a biblical lesson. The bishop at this rate, Koigi Wamwere, might start preaching if he keeps quoting Rehoboam and the lessons from the Bible. The bishop might be out of a job. But Bishop, I need to let you go. So your final comments, your advice to politicians and your advice to Kenyans at this moment in our political history.
Yes. Yes, like what I would say is that politicians have a great role to play in bringing peace and justice in this country, depending on how they understand the intrigues which are behind all this political quagmire we had been facing. And I would wish to appeal to them to look far beyond their party interest, to look far beyond the regions where they come from and to look beyond what they seem to stand for and look at the interest of the Kenyan who does not have a voice, but still has a right of say, a right of expression, a right to live wherever he wants. All these are fundamentals for a civilized society. And I want to say that Kenya should be mature enough now to lead the entire Eastern region or Eastern Africa in being an example of a workable democracy. As it is, we still have a long way to go. And in my appeal, last appeal to President Uhuru Kenyatta is that he has been given now a mandate. Let him display statesmanship. Let him now be a leader far beyond the Jubilee corridors of power. Let him display a real statesmanship at a time that Kenya is so much divided. For his legacy will be judged on how much effort he has put in bringing Kenya to where it's supposed to be.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Bishop, Professor David Kodia in Limuru for us this evening. We appreciate your time and thank you for your advice. I'm sure the leaders are listening and they will take that. So let's unpack something that Koigi Wamwere said, talking about both secession and these people's assemblies that NASA is forming. And today, Kilifi has become the 9th county assembly to ratify those people's assemblies that NASA has suggested as a way to discuss the governance issues in the country until such a time when a legitimate presidency is in place. I don't know what your reaction is. Is this a parallel government?
Yes, it is a parallel government, the way I see it. But I would want to ask, that is being done because Uhuru is the president. Suppose it was Raila Odinga, would Uhuru be going around doing the same? So I want our leaders to say it that way. Supposing it was you, would it be done? Would you be happy to be done by the other? And what will they achieve? How will they function? How will they be funded? Do I have to believe that their funding may also come from outside the coffers of government? And if it is going to come out of the coffers of government, who is going to be financing them? If it is not then going to be subversion of an outside system on our government.
What is your take on the People's Assemblies? 9 county assemblies have so far ratified them.
Well, I think that is the worst thing that should happen in this country, because it's a way of dividing a country, and it's another way of defiance. In fact, the main thing is that they're trying to defy the government, the central government. They're dividing this country so that those counties, I think the intention is for those counties to be almost independent from the government of Kenya, which I think is a wrong thing.
What about the challenges about and concerns about electoral injustice and inclusivity, which is why these are coming up? Aren't those legitimate concerns?
Well, the thing is that, you see, it's not really, you know, we should, when we came up with this constitution, the idea was to try and make people be closer to the government, as close as possible, and also to develop those areas so that the governors and their counties will be able to govern their counties almost independently. Because it was, people are complaining that money was not dripping into, to the grassroots.
To the grassroots.
To the grassroots.
Yes.
So the idea was for this government, the central government, to be sending money to the counties so that these counties can look after themselves. They wanted, in fact, the counties to be almost autonomous.
Okay.
So that people don't have to come to Nairobi. That's the whole idea. But because it has not taken root, that's why we still have people trying to come back to Nairobi.
Okay.
But we didn't want to have them independent. No. And you see, the way we are now going, it's like we want these counties to be independent from the central government.
But Governor, related to that, the reason why even this talk of secession is coming up is because there's groups of people in this country who feel they have been economically excluded for many years, historically, and even under this current devolved government, they're still just not getting enough money coming to them, they don't feel represented, and therefore they're invoking the right to self-determination.
Yes, but I think it's better to look at it from a bigger picture. You see, and I think this is part of what I would recommend to the president, that as he consolidates his legacy, the whole question of agreeing on what is the national interest, what is Kenya's national interest as a people, I think we need to have a common consensus. If we start agreeing, and this is our national interest, we want Kenya to be one nation, we want to be one people, we want to look at the issues of poverty. And there are those who think that they have been marginalized by various regimes. I think how to rebuild confidence in the entire country. I think that is something, that's why we are saying we need to start discussing these issues. But but just sitting on a few minutes and agreeing this is the way to go, I think that will not be. I think the president, of course, I'm sure will be looking at the issues of the rule of law. You can see almost a breakdown of the rule of law. We need to start consolidating the rule of law in this country, that culture of respect for the laws of this country, and also respect for institutions in this country. We see that as almost literally gone away. I think what I also want to say, if we do not look at the constitution again, we all went out with these leaders to put in a new constitution and hoping that it will bring us together. It would appear it's not doing so. Okay. I think a proper audit of our electoral process, electoral laws, and the constitution of Kenya, I think that needs to be looked at so that we can start refocusing this country on the fundamentals, on the national interest, on national security. You cannot just take up a panga and start killing your neighbor because it doesn't belong to your tribe. You cannot just sit in Kilifi or in Kiambu and say, we are now away from Kenya. We have now moved away from the country just because possibly your leader did not win. I think the national interest of this country be one nationhood, one statehood. These are things that we need to start inculcating right from nursery school, from ECD, look at our education system, start teaching history to our children so they know how this country came into being and what are the values, what the bishop is saying, what are the values that hold this country together. I think these are some of the fundamentals that we need to look at. And you see these frustrations of secession, which is really treasonable. I think to me, these are treasonable acts.
Well, how is it reasonable when the Constitution allows people, there's a process that if you intend to secede, this is what you need to do, gather this many signatures, referendum, all of that?
And I think this can't, you see, the Constitution is so activist and is not asymmetrical to the levels of civilization, political civilization in this country. I think we put in a constitution ahead of our culture, our political culture.
But it is because of this constitution that you're a governor, because it allowed for positions like yours.
Yeah, but there are still issues in the constitution that we need to look at so this country can remain one. The moment you start showing the people of Nyandarua that we can secede on a nation that is still battering with ethnicity, negative ethnicity, I think that is a major problem that we need to look at. The constitution is a bit activist. And I think the issues that also, not apart from that, there are also issues that need to be looked into to consolidate the statehood and nationhood of this country.
You wanted to jump in?
Yeah. The other day, not long ago, our brothers in South Sudan fought very hard for secession. And it was a long, drawn-out war. It costed them resources. It costed them lives. They got it. And how are they today? They're even more broken. They won't even want to split even the one country they got as South Sudan. So I would urge our fellow citizens, let us be tolerant to each other, let us listen to each other, and let us be able to appreciate each other. I respect your word, you respect my word. That is what I would urge the people of this country.
Okay. Finally, Koigi Wamwere, you were saying earlier that the court has made a decision and therefore you accept that outcome and the country should move on. But I found this opinion piece you wrote on 18th November, I think in the Star, which was fascinating because you're saying you do now recognize President Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto. But you said in this opinion piece that while the central Kenyan Rift Valley regions may vote for William Ruto, despite being a Kikuyu, I will not vote for him. This is because I am convinced he does not deserve my vote and his leadership is not the best for my family, my country, my world, and me. Have you changed your position on the Deputy President, William Ruto?
No, I have not changed my position on that because I still believe that for anybody to be elected, they have to be of benefit to the electors who will go out of their way to elect them. And the trouble I have is when somebody asks me to elect them, not because they have the merit to be voted for, but because they come from one community and I come from the other, and the community that I come from is supposed to owe the community of Ruto some kind of debt. By making that statement, I meant to say that I'm really not part of that debt, but I will be prepared to vote for Ruto if he shows me that he deserves my vote. If he does not deserve, I will certainly not give him my vote. So he has a hard job to do if he wants, but he could as well say that he doesn't need my vote at all to get elected. But if he does, I think he has a lot of work to do.
So
but something else I wanted to mention, you asked me about my party.
Yes.
And I want to mention that one of the things we need to do to be united is really to respect the parties we have in this country. There is no party that is better than the other. And we should be able to respect those who belong to the Jubilee Party, wherever they come from, because it is their right to belong to that party. We must also respect those who belong to NASA movement or ODM and a host of other parties that we have.
Right.
Because these parties have a right to exist, and those who join them also have a right to join them. I think this is very important. But ultimately, let me mention the issue of nusu mkate.
Yes.
It actually baffles me that there are people who have been speaking so strongly against the idea of the national cake being shared by all Kenyans. And I say to myself, I wish people could understand why all of us deserve to have a bit of the mkate, because we are all taxpayers. Nobody should be given a morsel of that mkate because of their political party or because of the politics that they do or political loyalties. There should be only one basis why we all deserve a bit of the national cake, that we are taxpayers. And to the extent that we are taxpayers, we have a right to be given a bit of that national cake, and all Kenyans have a right to it, all of them. You cannot have one Kenyan who can be said not to deserve a bit of that mkate. After all of us, including the dead, pay our taxes.
Okay.
Finally, I want just to say, yes, I agree with those who say, let us remain as one country, let us remain as one people, because no one has a right to drive the other out of this country.
Okay.
We are born into it because God wished us to live together. And it is possible for us to live together if we can abandon negative ethnicity. And if we live together, all these problems that we are seeing will probably disappear.
Let me take you back just really quickly, because something I didn't get a chance to follow up on. Condense your thinking for me. What exactly do you have against Deputy President William Ruto?
To be quite honest, I think that he had something to do with the rigging of elections that happened in this county. I was a victim of that rigged election. I did not go to court to petition against the outcome because I did not believe that I would have justice. That is one reason. But the other reason I have is that I don't believe in his leadership. When I look at his history, he does not convince me that he has done anything for this country that would deserve one to be elected president of this country. In America, if you are an adult during the Vietnam War and you did not fight, you did not go to Vietnam to fight for your country, then you did not get elected. So we must start judging people who come forward for leadership. We must judge their history, see whether it assists them to become our leaders or it does not assist them. As it is, I don't believe that the history of Ruto qualifies him or even would make him a good president. That's why I think I would rather look for somebody else to be president come year 2022 rather than Ruto. But it is up to him. He can convince me that he deserves my vote and I will give it to him, but not before.
We will leave it there. Thank you so much, Koigi Wamwere. Appreciate your time tonight for staying up with us to talk about these important issues. We're going to leave it there. Asante sana. I want to conclude with you, gentlemen, on my panel. Again, I apologize we had a manual today. We will do better to bring in more representation of women on our shows. What is the way forward where we are right now as a country, Franklin?
Don't be apologetic about that. We are only men. You can also bring ladies tomorrow.
Only ladies.
So that only ladies.
Fair enough.
So that they can square out with that issue. I think the issue on William Ruto and Koigi, I want to believe is a personal issue. So they will have to handle it on a personal level.
I didn't want to ask you about that. I was asking about the way forward.
I'm just commenting.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I know you're asking me to sum it up.
Yes.
Now, I would want to urge the president to see what has happened today to be the beginning of a new chapter, to be the beginning of running the affairs of the nation. He needs to go back to the Constitution, ask what are my roles, what are my duties, and what are the rights of various individuals and organizations in the Constitution. That is, get back to the Constitution. Number two, Jubilee had a manifesto. NASA had a manifesto. Each one of them said these manifestos had great things which would be able to deal with social, economic, and political issues of the country. I think it would not be so heavy for the president to obtain a copy of the Jubilee Manifesto, obtain a copy of the NASA Manifesto, simply see how the two are. And in the formation of government, I would want to urge him to look at the whole nation so that the appointments to the various positions available be all inclusive.
Okay.
Bring the country together that way. Number three, on that issue, I also would want to urge him and the entire team of Jubilee, let us be careful on the language we use on our opponents. Similarly, NASA on the language they use on Jubilee, so that we reduce this tension. We reduce this friction that is being created by the way we talk.
All right.
I believe that should be able to be an avenue towards healing the nation.
Okay. Healing the nation is his theme. What is the way forward, in your view?
Well, mine is to appeal to the NASA leader, Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, because when the High Court nullified the elections of 8th of was it August?
8th August.
8th August. Everybody, they accepted, NASA accepted. Although there was a bit of resistance from the other side, but everybody accepted. And when this election of 26th of this month, of last month, was it this month? Last month, isn't it? Came, he decided not to take part. We were surprised because he should have taken part. And right now, if Raila decides to cool down his supporters, there will be no problem. It will just end. Because most of the people who are demonstrating are majority his supporters. So he needs to be a statesman and appeal to these people, these young people, that for the sake of this country, let us keep peace.
Okay.
That will help this country, and I'm sure even the president will be happy, and they will work out, they will work better. Because if the president was also annoyed, or if his supporters also told their people to come to the streets, then that will be the end of this country.
Okay.
So we need to ask Mheshimiwa Raila to appeal. He's an elder. He's not a young man. He's a very good politician. And he likes this country. If he really likes this country the way I think he does, then he should ask his supporters to stop these demonstrations that is destroying people's properties, is destroying the country, is destroying the name of this country, is destroying even the economy of this country.
Demonstrations are allowed by the Constitution. What has often happened is when NASA demonstrators go on the street, they get antagonized by police, and then they turn violent.
No, you see, when you find that nothing is working, if it's not working, and it's the only one who can call it off so that we can relax. Let the demonstration come later, maybe after 6 months, when you have already relaxed and we have now started off the engine of this country. It will be much better. Because as long as he keeps on asking people to come to the streets, we shall not have peace for a very long time. That's why I'm appealing to him.
Governor, you have the last word.
Yes, I would like to, join what has been said by the other four, that we respect one another, but we also uphold peace and security. I think those are the fundamentals of any nation. Peace and security, as Mheshimiwa Gumo and Bett and the two other leaders, Bishop and Koigi, have mentioned. The upholding the rule of law really demonstrates how mature a democracy is. I think that would be, and respect for institutions in any country. We cannot go far unless we respect our institutions. I think the second issue, which is a bit, it should have come from the bishop, but the president organized prayers in Nakuru, national prayers. We are talking about reconciliation, about healing, about taking this nation forward in a spirit of forgiveness and people working together. I think it's not late to also call this nation into a second round of prayers and pray for this country. There are people who have died, there's people who are mourning. Okay. It doesn't matter which part they came from, but we need to also go before God and seek forgiveness. It doesn't matter who, and let this country heal and move, and move forward. So the issue of national healing and reconciliation and focusing this country on the economics. If you look at our stock exchange, we have done very poorly, almost losing close to almost 600 billion shillings, 700 billion. It's a lot of money. We need to create jobs for our young people. We need to supply water to our homes, electricity to our homes, improve our infrastructure, improve our roads. And this is what we should now start focusing this country into. And as I said, also look at the legal instruments, the structural instruments that we have in this country, and see how we can consolidate this country.
All right.
Tuwasiliane is my message.
Tuwasiliane.
Tuwasiliane.
All right. Wamesikia.
Tuwasiliane.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. Asanteni sana. We appreciate you staying up late to talk about these important issues. And thank you for staying up late to watch us and to contribute us. I'm seeing a lot of your comments. I'll be reading them to these gentlemen before they leave. Thank you for watching. And I hear your complaints that, Mark, you just want to play that music. People are complaining that they've had this music so long. It's like an earworm right now. You keep hearing it. And the election season is coming to a close. So I think we're kind of starting to feel wasteful about that music. Soon, you will not hear that Decision 2017 music anymore. And trust me, when it is gone, you will miss it. Because we're going to keep it in safekeeping until 2022, when we have Decision 2022. My name is Larry Madowo. Good night. Thank you for watching.